The dream always started the same way. Elena Rourke would be standing at a window, not the kitchen window of their apartment in Houston, but some window she'd never seen, looking out on something she couldn't name. A red plain, a sky the color of a wound, and far out on that plain a shape that was sometimes her husband and walking toward her, and sometimes her husband walking away, and sometimes both at once, and she could never tell which direction held the future and which held the grave. She'd wake at 0330, her heart kicking. The sheets wound around her like rope, and she'd reach for Marcus in the dark, and her hand would find him, warm and real and smelling like sleep, and she'd lie there listening to him breathe until she believed it. She never told him about the dream, he knew anyway. 17 years together leaves a man fluent in things his wife has never said. "You were at the window again," he said one morning 3 weeks before launch. He was at the stove, cracking eggs with one hand, the other wrapped around a mug. "I sleep fine. You sleep like a woman solving a math problem." She sat down. He put a plate in front of her. She looked at the eggs and said nothing. "Elena." "Don't." He sat across from her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Light came through the kitchen window. Real light. Houston morning light. Yellow and warm and nothing like the light in her dreams. "I'm coming back," he said. "That is a fact, not a wish." She picked up her fork. "Facts about Mars are thin on the ground, Marcus." He smiled at that. He always smiled when she landed one on him. It was one of the things she'd loved first, that smile, the willingness to be landed on. "Thin on the ground," he said. "Mars humor. You're full of them." She didn't smile back. She stabbed an egg. She thought, "I know you believe that. I know you mean it. I know it might not matter." What she said was, "Eat your eggs." The Ares IV Fine launched on a Tuesday, which Marcus Rourke had always considered a bad day for important things, but a statistically neutral day for survival. 3 crew, himself, mission commander, Dev Okafor, flight engineer and geologist, built like a man who had done manual labor as a child and never quite stopped, and Will Carver, systems specialist and the youngest member of the crew by 8 years, who had the face of someone who had never been wrong about anything, and the instincts, it turned out, of someone who knew he hadn't been tested yet. They rode the stack out of atmosphere on a column of controlled fire, the telemetry clean, Houston's voice a steady presence in their ears, and Marcus lay in his couch and thought about Elena's hands, the way she'd gripped his at the launch pad, the white of her knuckles, the way she hadn't said a word. The first weeks in transit were routine to the point of mundanity which Marcus had been told to expect and which still surprised him. The vast distances reduced to a long, careful boredom, the three of them cycling through duties and meals and exercise protocols and the particular sociology of 3 people locked in a metal tube with nothing but each other and the dark. Dev was good company. He spoke when he had something to say and fell silent the rest of the time, which Marcus found restful. Will was harder to read. Bright, careful, prone to long silences of his own, though his silences felt less like peace and more like computation. On the 31st day, Will produced a salami sandwich from his personal kit. He'd vacuum-sealed it himself, he explained. 2 weeks before departure, using a technique his grandmother had taught him for pickling and adapted for aerospace conditions. He ate it with great deliberation at the mission table, while Marcus and Dev worked through their meal pouches. A gray paste that the nutritionists had labeled protein aggregate, savory, and which tasted like someone had described salt to a machine. Marcus put down his spoon. He looked at the sandwich. That said, "Is a war crime." Will looked up. "Sir, you brought a salami sandwich to Mars, and you're eating it in front of us." Will considered this. "I have a thermos of coffee as well, if that makes it worse." Dev set down his own protein aggregate. He looked at Will. He looked at Marcus. He said, with great precision, "I want you to know that I have been professional about everything on this mission. The sleep cycles, the water rationing, the fitness protocols. But I am looking at that sandwich, and I am revising my values." Will, to his credit, tore it into thirds. He handed the pieces across the table. He poured the coffee into 3 of their foil cups. The coffee was extraordinary. It tasted like something a human being had made, which was, Marcus would later think, exactly the point. On the 44th day, they passed the cosmonauts. Houston had warned them. Mir 7, a Russian mission launched 9 months ahead of theirs, had gone dark on approach. No distress signal, no debris field, just silence, and then eventually the orbital mathematics that told you silence was permanent. 2 crew, Colonel Yevgenia Abramova, mission specialist, Lieutenant Pyotr Selin, pilot. Their suits had been equipped with emergency transponders, and it was the transponders that Ariv's sensors picked up, and it was Marcus who first saw them on the long-range camera feed. Two figures tumbling slowly in the void, the Mars sun small and distant behind them, their faces invisible behind darkened visors. He didn't speak for a long time. "Houston," he said finally, "we have eyes on Mir 7 crew. They are deceased. Request permission to log and continue." There was the delay. Then Houston came back. Aries Ivy, permission granted. Log positions, continue approach. He logged them. He continued approach. He did not look at the camera feed again. That night, unable to sleep in his bunk, he thought about Elena's dream. The one she'd never told him about, that he knew about anyway. He thought about the look on her face the morning he'd asked. He thought about how a window could face two directions at once. He was still thinking about it when Dev knocked on his bunk partition. "You should sleep," Dev said. "I know." Dev was quiet a moment. Then, Yevgenia Abramova, I met her once, at a conference in Baikonur. She was precise, very precise, knew everything about Mars geology. She had notes going back 15 years. Marcus said nothing. "I'm telling you this," Dev said, "because I want you to understand what I'm about to say isn't weakness, it's information." He paused. Whatever happened to them happened fast. There were no distress signals. Mir 7 was a good mission, good crew, good hardware. I know. Which means whatever stopped them in a way they couldn't report. Dev, I'm not trying to scare you, Marcus. I'm trying to make sure we both understand the weight of the thing. Marcus was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I understand the weight. I've understood it since Houston." "Good," Dev said. "I just wanted to make sure we're the same weight." He went back to his bunk. Marcus stared at the ceiling and breathed, and eventually, around 0400, fell asleep. He did not dream. Mars was not what the photographs had prepared him for. He'd studied the surface imagery for 3 years, the red plains, the dun ridges, the ancient dried riverbeds like claw marks across the face of the planet. He thought he knew it. He didn't. The photographs had given him color and shape. What they hadn't given him was the quality of the light, the way it fell on the rocks with a kind of exhausted clarity, as if the sun out here was very old and very far away and had given up caring what shadows looked like. Everything was sharp. Everything was still. There was no wind at their landing site, or there was wind but so thin and so far below any human threshold that it registered only on instruments, not on skin. They suited up. They depressurized the lock. Marcus went first, because he was the mission commander, and because he had stood with Elena at the kitchen window and eaten her eggs and accepted the weight of her silence, and he had decided, not bravely, just factually, that if something was going to happen to him on this planet, he would meet it standing upright. The surface crunched under his boots like frozen gravel. He stood still for a moment and breathed the recycled air of his suit and looked out at the horizon. "Houston," he said, "we're down. Sight is clear. Beginning survey protocol." They found the Russian 3 hours later. She was half buried under a rock shelf, her suit intact, her transponder dead. She must have pulled the battery, or it had failed, or something had failed it for her. Colonel Yevgenia Abramova, the precise woman with 15 years of Mars geology notes. She was frozen solid, her suit temperature reading absolute minimum, her suit cameras showing 42 hours of uninterrupted recording before the power had run out. Will knelt beside her. He didn't touch her. "Her seals are intact," he said. "There's no suit damage. Nothing environmental." Dev was scanning the rock shelf. "She came here deliberately. She crawled under this ledge deliberately. She was hiding," Marcus said. Nobody argued with him. The words sat in the thin air between them, and none of them moved to take it back. They flagged her position and got on the radio. Houston took 11 minutes to respond. The delay was a known quantity, but it felt different now out here, with the body of Yevgenia Abramova at their feet. Houston told them to document everything, to begin analysis, to proceed with the primary survey, to flag any anomalies. Define anomaly, Will said, off-channel. Marcus looked at the horizon. "I'll know it when I see it." He saw it 40 minutes later. It was moving. That was the first thing. Not that it was alien in shape or alien in material, though it was both, but that it moved, and the movement was purposeful. The way the movement of a living thing is different from the movement of weather. It was roughly half a meter across, articulated, segmented, like the thorax of something that had never been an insect, but was trying to remember what one looked like. It moved across the rocks without sound. It stopped. It rotated. Not turned, rotated. The whole body pivoting on some central axis. And Marcus realized it was orienting toward the sun. "Hold," he said very quietly. Dev and Will froze. The thing completed its rotation. In the direction it now faced, A narrow aperture opened along what Marcus was already thinking of as its front, and from that aperture came a single pulse of something that was not quite light and not quite heat, but was both. And the pulse hit the rock face 6 meters to Marcus's right and left a black circle of scorched mineral 3 centimeters across. None of them moved. The thing rotated again, oriented toward them. "Back to the ship," Marcus said. "Walking pace, don't run." They walked back to the ship. On the way, 2 more of the things emerged from the rock field. The same shape, the same movement, the same slow solar orientation before they fired. Dev took a pulse to the shoulder that punched through the outer layer of his suit, but stopped at the thermal underlayer. He made no sound. He kept walking. They got to the ship. Marcus sealed the lock and stood in the pressurization cycle and felt the air come back and said, to no one in particular, "Right." Dev peeled back his outer suit layer and looked at the scorch on the thermal fabric beneath. He touched it with 2 fingers, he said, "Polarite." That's what Mir 7's mission logs would have called them if they'd had time to file mission logs. "You knew about these?" Will said. "No." "I know now. Yevgenia Abramova's notes. There was a fragment in the public record before communication went dark. She used that word. Polarite. Solar-powered. Active during daylight. She had measured the pulse interval, 32 seconds between discharge cycles. Marcus was already at the console. Then we work at night. We don't know if they're active at night. We know they're active during the day. Night is better than day. What else do we know?" What else they knew, it turned out, was very little. They spent 6 hours in the ship running every sensor array they had across the Martian surface, cataloging 11 of the Polarite units visible from the ship's exterior cameras, mapping their patrol patterns. Because they did patrol, slowly, methodically, along routes that overlapped at intervals in a way that was too regular to be random. Designed, Marcus thought. They're designed. They're not creatures. They're equipment. The question then was, equipment belonging to whom? The answer came at 0200. Ship time when the sphere appeared. There was no approach, no trajectory. It simply arrived. One moment the sky above their landing site was empty Mars sky, stars sharp and merciless in the thin atmosphere, and the next moment the sphere was there, 300 meters across, self-luminous, the color of something between amber and white that Marcus's eyes couldn't quite resolve into a single hue. It hung 300 meters off the surface. It did not communicate. It did not move. It simply waited. Marcus stared at it on the camera feed. He thought about the cosmonauts tumbling in the void. He thought about Yevgenia Abramova under her rock shelf, suit intact, nothing environmental. She wasn't hiding from the cold, he said. No, Dev agreed. She was hiding from the light. Will was at the sensors. The sphere is generating a field, electromagnetic wide spectrum. It's blanketing our comms. Marcus checked. He was right. Houston was gone, not degraded, gone, cut off as cleanly as a wire. What about the engines? He said. Will ran the check. He didn't say anything for a moment. Then he said, propulsion is nominal, but the launch protocols require a handshake with mission control before. I know the protocols. Then you know we can't take off without Houston's authorization. I know the protocols, Marcus said again, more quietly. And I know that protocols are written by people who haven't been here. He looked at the sphere, 300 meters across, self-luminous, patient. He thought about what kind of intelligence builds something patient. He thought about what kind of intelligence builds something that hides its teeth until it's ready. Options, he said. We wait, Will said. We try to reestablish communication. We document. Dev was quiet for a moment. He was looking at the camera feed the way he'd looked at the charred fabric of his suit, with a kind of flat, scientific attention that had nothing romantic in it. The Polarites orient to the sun, he said. They're solar-powered, or solar-triggered, which means they have a relationship to light that's mechanical, not intelligent. He paused. The sphere is different. The sphere is doing something the Polarites aren't doing, which is thinking. Marcus looked at the sphere. Yevgenia Abramova had 15 years of notes, he said. She measured the pulse interval. 32 seconds. She came here with a plan. She died here, Will said. She came here with a plan. Something changed the plan. He stood up. He put on his suit. Marcus, Will said, I'm going outside. The Polarites. Night. You said they're solar-powered. I'm going out at night. If I'm wrong, I'll be wrong very quickly, and you'll have data. He sealed his helmet ring. He checked his seals. He thought about Elena's hands on his at the launch pad, the white of her knuckles. If I'm right, I'll be back in 20 minutes. Dev stood up. I'm coming. You're staying. Someone needs to be at the console. Will Cav. He said it with enough weight that Dev stopped. Watch the sphere. If it moves toward me, get on the radio and keep trying, Houston. If it moves toward the ship, seal the lock and go. Marcus, that's an order, not a request. Dev sat back down. He had the look of a man swallowing something that wouldn't go down. Marcus went out. The polarites were dormant. He'd been right about that. Without the sun, without that solar trigger, they were inert shapes in the rock field, angular and still, and he moved between them with his helmet light off, navigating by the ambient glow of the sphere overhead, and that glow was enough to see by. More than enough. The sphere lit the Martian surface the way a full moon lights snow. Precise, shadowless, every rock edge sharp. He walked toward it. Not toward the sphere itself. Toward the edge of the field, where the polarites sat dormant, to the place where he could see the sphere clearly. And the sphere could, presumably, see him. He stopped there. He stood in the open. He turned off his suit's electromagnetic shielding. Against every protocol, against every instinct, and he stood there without it, and waited. The sphere moved, not toward him, toward the ship. He was already running before he completed the thought, boots hammering on the frozen surface, his breath loud in the suit, and he saw it happening.
The sphere descending, slow and deliberate, and from its lower face a tendril of light reaching toward the Ares I-4B. Not violent, not explosive, just reaching, the way a hand reaches into water.
Will was at the airlock when Marcus got back. Dev was at the console. It touched the ship, Dev said. External. No breach. It was reading us, I think. The field spiked, and then it withdrew. Marcus stood in the lock and breathed. Where is it now? Back to 300 meters. He pulled off his helmet. He was sweating. He thought, it's not hostile. Not yet. It's gathering information. It's doing what we're doing. He thought, what does that tell me about what it wants? He sat down at the console beside Dev, and they looked at the sphere together, and Marcus said, when the Russian mission went silent, Mir 7 had been on the surface for 11 hours. Ours is hour 9. So we have 2 hours, before something changed for them. Maybe. Dev was quiet. Then he said, what changed for them could be anything. We don't know their sequence of events. We know they ended up frozen under a rock shelf and tumbling in the void. We know 2 of them did. Marcus looked at him. There were 2 crew. 2 transponders logged, 2 bodies. And Yevgenia Abramova's notes placed a 3rd crew member on the manifest, a geologist named Sorokin. No transponder logged, no body. The word sat between them like the word hiding had sat between them at the rock shelf. He might be dead, Will said from the back of the cabin. Transponder failure. He might be dead, Marcus agreed. Or, the sphere pulsed, a single slow brightening like a breath. And in that pulse, Marcus saw something that hadn't been there before. A shape dark against the amber-white light. A human shape, inside the sphere, pressed against some inner surface the way a person presses a hand against glass. Will, Marcus said quietly, I see it. The shape raised one arm. It did not wave. It pressed the arm flat against whatever surface it was against, and Marcus looked at the angle of the elbow, the positioning of the hand, and recognized it. Not the gesture of someone waving, but the gesture of someone pointing. He's telling us something, Marcus said. He's been inside that thing for 9 months, Will said. He's alive. He might not be. He raised his arm. He's alive, and he's telling us something. Marcus stared at the sphere. He's pointing. What is he pointing at? Dev was already working. He measured the angle of the arm, triangulated, rough, fast, improvised, against the sphere's position and the surface geography visible on their landing cameras. The rock field, Dev said. Specifically, there. He put a circle on the map. About 60 meters northeast of our position. There's an outcropping there. We couldn't see into it clearly on approach because of the angle. What's in there? Unknown. But he's pointing at it. Marcus stood up. He put his helmet back on. Will was on his feet. Marcus, you just came in. I know. The sphere hasn't done anything aggressive. Whatever it's doing something with the man inside. And if we go out there again, if we stay in here, Marcus said, we are not flying home. The comms are blocked. The launch protocols need Houston. If Sorokin is alive in that thing, and he's been there 9 months, he knows things Yevgenia Abramova knew. Things that got her to a rock shelf and him into a sphere. And the 3rd crew member? Marcus looked at him. There were 2 crew. Will understood. He sat back down. He put his hands flat on the console. Dev was already suiting up. They went out together this time, Marcus and Dev, moving fast through the dormant polarite field toward the northeast outcropping. The sphere tracked them. He could feel it in the way the ambient light shifted, tilting slightly, following, but it didn't descend. It waited. It watched. The outcropping was a shallow cave. Really, A volcanic formation, ancient, the walls dark basalt with the granular texture of cooled lava. Dev's headlamp found it before Marcus's did, and he played it across the back wall and said very quietly, "Marcus." There was equipment, Russian equipment, old, frostwhite with cold, but intact. A small transmitter array, a manual log sealed in a sample case, and a handwritten note sealed in the same case in Russian, which Dev translated in pieces, his voice careful and low. The Polarites go dormant at night. We learned this on day 6. On day 1, we did not know. The sphere is not aggressive. It is curious. It has taken Dmitri. He is not dead. I have seen him through the surface of the sphere. He tries to communicate. The sphere responds to deliberate action. It withdrew when I blocked the sun with my body, stepping between the nearest Polarite and the light source. I believe it understood the gesture. I believe it understood that I was interfering with its system deliberately, and that this communication, interference, is the language it knows. It will not let us leave. The electromagnetic field prevents launch. I believe it is waiting. I do not know for what. I am going into the lander. I will not leave the lander again. If this note is found, the key is the sun. Use the sun. Block it. Redirect it. Deny it. The Polarites are the nerve endings. The sphere is the brain. Tell the brain through the body. The note ended. Dev read it twice. Then he folded it carefully along its original creases and put it back in the case. She was trying to buy time, he said. She ran out. Yes. They looked at the transmitter array. It was old, 9 months old, cold and frost damaged, but Dev checked it with the engineer's hands he'd had since childhood, careful, unhurried, reading the components the way a man reads a language he learned before he could read. I can make this work, he said. It won't reach Houston, but it might reach Will. That'll have to be enough. Dev started working. Marcus stood at the mouth of the cave and watched the sphere and thought about what it meant to communicate through interference. To say I see you not with words, but with action. To put your body between a system and its power source and make that the signal. He thought about Elena at the kitchen window. He thought about what it means to be seen. Dev got the transmitter working in 11 minutes. They raised Will on a short-range frequency, scratchy but intelligible, and Marcus talked him through what they'd found and what they were going to do. That's insane, Will said. It might be, Marcus said, but Yevgenia Abramova was not an imprecise woman. She had 15 years of notes. She measured the pulse interval. She figured out the language. She also died on this planet. She died because she stopped. We're not going to stop. Marcus paused. Will, the sphere is holding the electromagnetic field. The field is blocking our launch. If I can communicate with the sphere, make contact, real contact, not just proximity, there's a chance it releases the field. There's a chance Sorokin gets out. And if it doesn't? Marcus was quiet a moment. The sphere hung overhead, patient and luminous and vast. Then we try something else, he said. We're human beings. We keep trying things until something works. That's what we do. There was a pause. Then Will said, What do you need me to do? Get to the manual launch system. Bypass the Houston handshake protocol. Yes, I know. Just do it. If the field drops, even for a second, you fire the engines and you don't wait for me. Marcus, that is an order. Dev is coming back to you. He'll help with the bypass. I'm going to go talk to the sphere. He heard Dev starting to say something. He signed off before Dev could finish it. He walked to the center of the field. Not running, not sneaking. Walking deliberately in a straight line, in the open, under the sphere's light. He stopped when he judged himself to be directly beneath it. He looked up, 300 meters, self-luminous, patient. Inside it, visible now, clearer than before, as if the sphere was allowing it, the shape of a man. Sorokin, 9 months, still upright. Marcus thought about what it means to communicate through interference, to use the body as the instrument. He turned off his suit's electromagnetic shielding. He turned off his suit's thermal regulation. He was not going to need it for very long, one way or another. He stood there in the Martian night with only the suit's structural integrity between him and the environment, and he raised his hands, not in surrender, not in greeting, but in the specific posture of a person demonstrating awareness. Here I am. I know you see me. I know you're waiting. I am waiting with you. The sphere pulsed. He pulsed back. He pressed the palms of his suit against the faceplate, blocking the interior light, then releasing. Darkness, then light. Darkness, then light. The simplest possible signal. On, off. Presence, absence. The sphere went very still. He did it again. Darkness, light. Darkness, light. He counted the intervals. 3 seconds dark, 3 seconds light, 3 dark, 3 light. And he kept it steady, kept it deliberate, kept it the furthest possible thing from random. The sphere descended, Not fast, not aggressive. Slowly, the way something large moves when it wants to be clear about its intentions. It came down until it was 50 meters above the surface, and in its amber-white face, the shape of Sorokin was very clear now, the man's hand flat against the inner surface, and Marcus could see that the hand was shaking. He kept pulsing. Darkness, light, darkness, light. The sphere pulsed back. Not the same rhythm, a different one, complex, layered, something with intervals he couldn't read yet. But it was answering. It was responding to his signal with a signal of its own, and that meant, it means there's a conversation, even if we can't understand each other yet. There's a conversation. He thought of the note in the cave. The key is the sun. He lowered his hands from his faceplate. He turned, slowly, demonstrably slowly, every movement a sentence, and he walked to the nearest dormant Polaroid. He crouched beside it. He put his hand on it. He looked up at the sphere. The sphere was very still. He stood up. He positioned himself between the Polaroid and the horizon where the sun would rise, the precise direction, the angle he'd calculated during the night's survey work. He put himself in the sunline, a human body, between the power source and the machine. I can stop your system. I'm demonstrating that I can stop your system. I am not stopping it. I am showing you that I have the choice. The sphere descended another 30 meters. Sorokin's hand on the inner surface moved. Not a wave, not a signal, but a gesture Marcus recognized because he'd seen it in 1,000 training exercises and briefings and pre-mission reviews. A thumb, up. He felt something release in his chest. On the radio, Will's voice, "Marcus, something's happening. The electromagnetic field it's fluctuating. It's not holding steady. Don't launch yet," Marcus said. "Hold position." The field dropped to 60%, 55. It's hold. He turned back to the sphere. He did the thing he'd been building toward. Slow, deliberate, the final sentence of a very short and very important conversation. He stepped away from the Polaroid. He stepped out of the sunline. He made the gesture of removal. I had the power. I stepped back from it, and he held his hands open. Palms up, the human universal. For I am not a threat, which might or might not mean anything to the intelligence inside the sphere, but was all he had. The sphere went dark, not completely, not the extinction of it, but its luminosity dropped by 90% from a sun to a candle, and in the sudden Martian darkness Marcus could see the stars again, cold and countless and indifferent, and he heard Will's voice cracking through the radio. "Field is down. Field is down, Marcus. Propulsion is online. We have full go." "Wait," Marcus said. "Wait for Sorokin." A pause. Then Will, "Marcus, I need to. Wait for Sorokin." The sphere, dim now, barely lit, descended to 10 meters, to 5. It touched the surface with a sound Marcus felt more than heard, a subsonic vibration in the soles of his boots, and its surface opened, not dramatically, not with force. It opened the way a hand opens, finger by finger, a deliberate unfolding. The man who came out was thin, 9 months thin. He moved carefully, the way a person moves when they're relearning gravity, and his suit was mere 7 issue, older than Erez IDs by a generation, and his face behind the visor was older than 9 months should have made him. But his eyes were alert and present, and very, very alive. He stopped 2 meters from Marcus. Marcus said, "Colonel Sorokin." The man nodded. His radio crackled, a different frequency, but close enough. "American," he said. His English was accented, but clear. "Mission Commander Marcus Rourke, Ares Off-Air. We found Abramova's notes." Sorokin was quiet for a moment. He looked at the sphere behind him, now closed, now still. He said, "She was trying to protect us, I know. She understood the language before I did. She was." He stopped. He looked at the ground. "She was very precise." "I know," Marcus said again. He put his hand on Sorokin's arm, just briefly, just the contact of one suited body against another, the clumsiest possible gesture of human connection. Sorokin looked at the hand. Then he looked up. "Can we leave?" he said. "My systems specialist is warming up the engines." They walked back to the ship. Will had done the bypass clean. Marcus had not expected otherwise, because Will had the instincts of someone who hadn't been tested yet and had now been tested, and what had come through was something steady and quiet and very good. He walked them through the departure sequence, and Marcus and Sorokin took their positions, and Dev ran the pre-launch checks with the meticulous speed of a man who had done them 300 times in training and understood now, viscerally, what they were for. The sphere sat on the surface behind them and did not interfere. The Polarites, awakening as the sun crept up over the horizon, oriented toward the launch site, and stopped, as if something had told them to stop, as if something had made a choice. Marcus thought about conversations conducted through interference, through the body, through the deliberate withholding of power, He thought, we told it something. And it heard us, and it chose. He didn't know what it had chosen. Exactly. He suspected he wouldn't know for a long time. Maybe never. Some conversations you have with something so different from yourself that you leave without being sure you were understood, or even sure you understood, and you carry the uncertainty home with you like a stone in your pocket, and you learn to live alongside it. He'd have to think about that later. Right now, he had a ship to launch. Ares IV, he said, this is Mission Commander Rourke. We are go for launch. Crew manifest. Rourke, Okafor, Carver. He paused a half second. Sorokin. 4 souls aboard. Dev looked at him. Will looked at him. Sorokin buckled in at the spare station, looked at him. Marcus hit the ignition. The engines fired. The red plane fell away beneath them, and the sphere shrank to a point of amber light on the surface, and then there was nothing below them but Mars, and above them nothing but the black and the stars and the long way home. The radio static was back. The comms were clearing as they climbed above the electromagnetic field. Will cycled through the Houston frequencies. 90 seconds later, they had contact. Houston's voice, familiar and slightly stunned and trying hard not to show it. Ari, this is Houston. We're reading you. Please confirm status. Houston, this is Ares IV. Marcus looked at the camera feed, the surface falling away, the sphere a mode of light now, getting smaller. We are nominal. 4 crew. All systems go. Beginning return to trajectory. The delay. Then Houston, 4 crew. Say again, 4 crew. Confirmed. 4 crew. I'll explain the full situation in my mission report. He paused. Also, Houston, you're going to want to look at what we recorded down there. Everything. All of it. He thought for a moment about how to describe it. It's a start, he said finally. It's a first sentence. Another delay. Then Houston's voice came back, and behind the controlled professional composure of it, he could hear what was actually there. The thing that had been on hold. The thing that comes loose when the weight lifts. Ares IV, Houston said. We're glad you're coming home. Marcus looked out the viewport. Mars curved below him, receding, red and still and ancient and holding its own counsel. He thought about Elenea at the kitchen window, the dream she'd never told him about, the look on her face when she'd pressed his hand at the launch pad, the white of her knuckles, the thing she hadn't said. He thought about Yevgenia Abramova's notes. The key is the sun. Use the sun. Block it, redirect it, deny it. He thought about what it means to put your body between a system and its power and hold there, not aggressively, just demonstrably. Here I am. I have the choice. I am choosing something other than force. He thought about a thumb inside a sphere, seen through an alien surface, trembling but upright. He thought, we will not know for a long time what happened down there, what we said, what we started. Whether the thing inside that sphere decides humanity is worth talking to or worth ending, whether the Polarites go dormant forever or wake up with instructions we won't like, whether this was the beginning of something or the first page of a book that ends in fire. He thought, we don't get to know. Not yet. That's the weight of the thing, the weight Dev had warned him about, the weight he'd been carrying since Houston, that you go into the dark and you act with the best of what you are and you come back and you live in the uncertainty. You come back, he pressed the radio. Houston, he said, tell my wife I'm coming home. The stars were very clear. The ship held its course. Below him, Mars was already only a memory, growing small and red and distant, and in the quiet of the cabin, Will was running trajectory calculations and Dev was writing up the geological survey notes he'd managed to take in the brief window between landing and everything else, and Sorokin was asleep. Really asleep. The deep, unguarded sleep of a man who has been awake and afraid for 9 months, and has, at last, been given permission to stop, and Marcus Rourke sat in the commander's seat and held his course and breathed. 4 souls aboard, all systems nominal, long way home.